Hi, everybody. Guess what? It's at Skating PJ with Andy K. We're finally doing it. Can you believe it?
I cannot believe that we're not in the same room and still talking to each other. This is outrageous.
It is outrageous, and it's probably the way the world should be. That's all I'm going to say. So it is. Are you ready for it? Because I'm using all my buttons now. Phone Freelance Friday. We're going to have to change it to Facebook Live Freelance Friday, maybe. What do you think?
Well, I don't really care what it's called.
Okay.
To be honest with you, I mean these are crazy times. These are really difficult times. And 3 weeks ago, I was walking my dog at 7 o'clock in the morning on a deserted cricket field, which means quite a lot to people in the Commonwealth, possibly not so much to people outside the Commonwealth. And I needed to cheer myself up, and I just called an old mate. And we had a good old chat, and we had a good old laugh. And he's in the same boat that so many of us are in, i.e., we're all sitting at home wondering when the next paycheck's coming, when the next event's coming. And although we were talking about some pretty heavy stuff, we put the phone down, and I'd really enjoyed the conversation. Also, I hadn't noticed I'd done 2 laps at the cricket field, so I was getting my steps up from a Fitbit. And as I was walking home, I thought, well, that cheered me up. Why do we not try and cheer up as many people as we possibly can? So with a good friend of mine who designed the little logo that you saw earlier, Rob Curry from Visual Edge, we came up with this idea of Phone a Freelance Friday. And it literally is, there we go, it literally is just finding somebody. It might be a mate, somebody who is doing the same as you, sitting at home, feeling a bit low, and you just want to ring them up and have a laugh. It could be somebody who, back in 1993, you had this brilliant idea and you've done absolutely sod all about it. Now is the time to do something about it. It might be a competitor. It might be an old boss. It could be anybody. But the self-employed and the freelance event community are having a terribly, terribly tough time. And I just think that getting a phone call from somebody, is great. Getting a phone call from somebody, or a Zoom call, or a WhatsApp, whatever, from somebody you don't know is probably even more exciting. To be honest with you, this is the most exciting it can be. I mean, getting a live with PJ doesn't get any better than this.
Wait, I got some more excitement for you. Are you ready?
Yeah. Oh my goodness me, Carla Piper. Well. We've dialing onto heaven, haven't we? I mean, when the boss is listening in.
I just want to know if she's still got her pajamas on, but that comes back in a second. Here are another couple of them. Hey,
Amy. Hi, Amy. Goodness me. One of the most talented producers I've ever met. Oh, Andy.
Andy was apparently a Facebook virgin, but here he is now. Way to go, Andy. We're proud of you.
Yeah, Andy and I met in Lima. We'd never come across each other before, and I heard an English voice in the background. Well, he's from the north of England, so I say English.
Does it count?
That's sort of stretching it a bit, And we went out for a couple of beers, and as they say, it's a very small world, but I wouldn't want to hoover it. But he knew loads of people that I knew, and he's a very, very good man who does very good work.
And he orders killer stuff on the menu. That's all I can tell you, because we all went out for dinner, a whole bunch of this. Daniel and Rooney found us. Way to go, Daniel. I'm very proud of you, because we both know that wasn't easy. And this is so wait a second. There's a couple more. By the way, Carla says she's fully dressed. I don't know that I believe that. We both know her better than that.
We do. I mean, it's good that we've got out of our day pajamas and we're in our sort of. We're in clothes. I mean, this is outrageous.
I'm in my.
I've worn clothes in 3 weeks.
And you shaved. You didn't. I did.
No,
anyway,
I didn't shave.
Sebastian, thank you so much for joining us. And oh my goodness, this was one of my favorite skating fans, Howard Bannister from Australia. Howard, thank you so much for joining us. He is maybe one of the wittiest commenters of all of the commenters I've ever had. This is Roxy Degno. Good morning. And so, Andy, tell people a little bit about who you are and what you do.
I grew up working with. I grew up with lots of friends who are way more intelligent than I was. That was my early life. People who've gone on to great things. But but I felt I had a bit of a creative spark somewhere lurking in the background. And so I started doing some local radio in Cambridgeshire and worked my way through the ranks of the BBC, and ended up working in London when the first Gulf War came about. And the BBC had never done anything like this before, but we started a 24-hour rolling radio news service, which was terribly called Scud FM. I mean, it wasn't called Scud FM, but if you remember, the Scud missiles were the big danger, and the local nickname was Scud FM. But the listenership was absolutely massive, and from that, a brand new network was established called Radio 5, which became 5 Live, and that's a 24-hour news and sport network, which I was very lucky to be involved with. In fact, we celebrated anniversary just a couple of days ago. But I'd always had a passion for athletics. One of my early radio postings was in Essex, where some of you people may have even watched people from Essex, The Way is Essex on television. But we had some incredibly talented athletes, and so I got to learn about athletics quite a lot. And when I went to London, they said, "What sport do you want to do?" I said, "Well, I'd like to do athletics." And they said, "Why do you want to do athletics?" And I said, "Well, you're guaranteed a great trip every year, aren't you? I mean, you've got the Olympics, the Worlds, the Europeans, or the Commonwealths." And I was a single guy at the time, so it made perfect sense. And from that, I started doing some announcing. And some years later, to cut a very long story a bit shorter, this job came up as event presentation manager for UK Athletics. The guy who was doing it, very experienced TV guy, was about to leave. And I was very fortunate enough to be offered the job. And from what has become effectively a hobby, a full-time job has ensued, and working on some of the biggest events in the world, which has been fantastic, meeting great people like yourself and Carla and
but not Amy.
It's been an extraordinary journey.
I've got to tell you one other thing, that Murray Anderson says hi to us. Morning, Peach. He's one of the people that other people believe is actually married to me. He isn't.
Really?
We love his wife. Yeah, we're not married. But he runs music. He's Canadian. He's completely bonkers. And since
sounds a perfect match.
That's what I said. We've been sitting beside each other, him playing music, me announcing at figure skating events since, I don't know, before ice was invented. We've got some very good stories about Sochi and when we were together, waiting for the ice dance results to come up, which of course were very good for Canada. So Murray Anderson, hi, back to you. Stephen Belanger, former skater, wonderful coach, wonderful choreographer. Nice to have everybody here, honestly. So much fun. So you made the transition. Were you an athlete yourself?
Oh God, no. I wish I had been. No, rugby was my thing, and I played that until I was about 35. Ended up playing Teddington. To be honest with you, PJ, this is one of the great things in life, isn't it? Rugby is one of those sports which is so incredibly social. And yes, you've got 30 guys trying to knock 7 bells out of each other, but at the end of it, it's such a social experience. And my last game of rugby was playing for a team called Teddington in London. And my 3 best mates, who had all flown in from different parts of the world, unbeknownst to me, I didn't know anything about it, all turned up on the same team. So we had Mark, who was was working in Pakistan, John, who was in Australia, and David, who was from the States, all came in, and we played our last game of rugby together. So that was my big thing. But what I learned very quickly was athletics is an extraordinarily great sport to be an announcer, an interviewer, commentator on, because the people within it themselves are really good people. Now, I don't want to criticize any other sports, but other sports which at the time were full-time were possibly a little bit up themselves, whereas athletes would, train 5 days a week, perform for Great Britain on Saturday, and on Monday morning we're back in their day job teaching at school, or driving a bin lorry, or whatever it happened to be. And I just found the people within athletics to be absolutely fascinating because of that level of commitment. Having worked a full-time job, they might have got home, fed the kids, etc., and then they're off to some stadium at 8 o'clock at night to do 2 hours training. Now, I realise that everybody listening to this would love to live in Great Britain, because it's 30 degrees pretty much all the time, crystal clear blue water. This is not the truth. It's freezing cold and it's normally raining.
I love your fog.
Yeah, me too. But so the commitment of these people is quite extraordinary. And I thought, well, if they're committing this time, energy to becoming better athletes, I'll try and commit the same time and energy in becoming a better announcer or a better commentator or a better producer, etc., etc. So I was enthralled by athletes and athletes themselves, and that's why I've stayed with the sport.
Do you know, I've got to tell you that when you and I, I of course have known you. This was harsh, but you know what? It's Andy somehow, so I'm going to let you read it.
Yeah, he's also written professional drinker gold medalist, which I think is hugely unfair.
I think so too, but funny nevertheless.
Yeah.
Okay.
Funny. Yeah.
Hi, Richard. Hope Winnipeg's good. My goodness, you've still got snow. And then, of course, my venue producer from Lima, one of them for artistic skating, Naomi Grabo-Strabo from California. So great to see we can't see your face, but it's great to see your little avatar. That's what I think. So when you and I first were talking in Lima, one of the things that fascinates me is when I announce figure skating, one or two or a team for synchronized skating get on the ice and then they skate and then they get off. It's sort of like sequential. It's a sequential sport. Whereas your sport is like everything going all at the same time. How do you actually manage it? And how did you get that all figured out?
Oh, that's a really good question. I mean, it is a moving piece of origami. I mean, it is tricky. And I would say to anybody in events, whether you're doing figure skating or swimming, or hockey or rugby or athletics, it doesn't matter. It's all in the preparation. That's where it starts, in the timetabling and the preparation. Now, yes, of course, in figure skating, as you say, PJ, you've got 16 couples that are going to dance on the ice. You know the order they're going to come in. You probably even know the music they're going to dance to. So there is an order to it. There is some kind of rhyme or reason to it. In athletics, track and field, we have a rough idea of what's going to happen. We know when things should start. We have a rough idea of when things should finish. The problem is that there are so many unknowns and there are so many examples. You're watching a hammer competition and the first guy comes out to throw the hammer and he doesn't do it quite right, and the hammer gets stuck 30 feet up in the air in the cage, and it takes them 10 minutes to get a ladder to.
Does that happen? Has that happened?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Wow.
And so you're one throw into the competition and you're 10 minutes behind. So you're now scrabbling desperately to work out where this competition is going to end. Now, I would say that in athletics, this is where the little bit of knowledge that I've got is handy. So you need to know that, how long it takes each athlete to throw a hammer, which is, say, approximately 70 to 80 seconds. You need to know how many attempts are left. Then you can times the number of attempts by the number of seconds. And then you can work out how long that competition is going to run and how late it's going to be. And also, does that impact on something else? Because, of course, event presentation in athletics is great as a standalone, but you're having to do it with competition, the athletes themselves. And you're having to do it with host broadcast. You ask a host broadcaster what's the worst thing that can ever happen, they'll say you're on lane 4 of an introduction of a race, and in the background there's a massive cheer. And everybody knows they've missed something. The trick is to make sure they don't miss something. So it is a jigsaw. It's putting that together on a minute-by-minute basis. It is tricky. I think people who do other sports are incredibly talented. But I do watch people sometimes say, this is not a criticism, this is just a fact of life. I do watch sometimes people getting very sweaty when they've got to do one sync with host broadcast. Yes. Quite rightly. It's a really important thing.
Yeah.
And then I walk away and think, oh, great, I've got to do 27 syncs an hour for the next 4 hours. because that is the nature of athletics. But that's what makes it fun. That's what makes it exciting. That's what gets the stress levels up, you know.
Here's a really good comment from Rooney Tasker, if you'll just sort of read through it, talking about live athletics. So let's talk about the announcer, since I'm an announcer.
Yeah.
I've been in scenarios. It's a very, some would say, interdependent, some would say codependent relationship, because I'm really relying on the I always say to the venue producer, and you would be in the venue producer chair and I would be in the announcer's chair, I'm not saying anything until you tell me to say something, because I believe, in my mind, there has to be sort of like this straight up and down kind of chain of command. And I know announcers, I've met announcers along the way who sort of feel that they're the show and that they can do what they think is kind of the right thing. I've also met venue producers who aren't as well prepared as they should be. I had a venue producer once go 10 seconds ahead of the broadcast. Boy, were the TV people really upset about that, because when the feed joined in, it was like halfway through a bar of music that then didn't make sense, and it was an obvious error. I mean, mistakes happen. We're humans, for sure. But tell me a little bit about that relationship between you and your announcers. And you've worked with some of the best in the whole world, for sure.
Oh, I've been so lucky to work with some outstanding people. First, again, I'd go back to the preparation in terms of telling them what to expect. We know in athletics how we introduce a track event. For instance, you know, there'll be a sting on the screen with some music embedded in that. There'll be the announcement of the event. The introduction music will come in. Then we meet the athletes. All, of course, is being coordinated with competition and television to ensure that's all happening at the same time. Because, as everybody will know, you know, when the athlete waves to the crowd, the reason they're doing that is there's a TV camera in front of them. Competition have got them to that point, and the event presentation announcer is saying their name at exactly the right time. But funnily, with athletics, you have to let the announcers go somewhat, because you can't micromanage what they say. You could have 5 different things going on at once. Sometimes at the Olympics or the World Championships or the Commonwealths, if you've got 2 pools of long jump, 2 pools of high jump, you could have a shot put, and you could have 6 or 7 things going on. You can't possibly micromanage that. You have to give the announcers enough leeway and trust them enough to be talking about the right thing at the right time, with guidance, of course. And you know, that might be me just going PJ next in the long jump, so they know that somebody important's about to go, or it could be me saying, "Stop talking now. We're going somewhere else." But
lots of people say that, Andy. Stop talking now.
Yeah. But you know, I think with athletics, you have to let the announcers go. You absolutely have to let the announcers go, because it would be impossible to script every single word that comes out of their mouths. And I do realize in other sports that, you know, that scripting is hugely important. You know, the athletes walk out, you introduce them, you introduce the referees or the officials or the judges, etc. Competition ensues, and the mic effectively is turned off. You know, in three minutes of boxing, the event presentation announcer says nothing, and then would come back possibly in between the rounds. For us in athletics, it's different. We'll do the introduction, the athletes get ready to race. The moment the gun goes, you know, we're back announcing again. So yeah, we are very fortunate, and the IAAF, which is now World Athletics, spotted this very early, that they realized they needed experts. And do you know, it's really interesting, PJ, that in athletics, the announcer's role was a technical official role for many, many years.
Really?
It was seen as an extension of competition.
Huh.
And it's only in the last 5 or 6 years that has changed, and that the announcer has come under event presentation, and therefore most of them these days are professionals. May not be professionals in event presentation, but certainly professionals behind a microphone.
Yeah.
And by golly, does that make a difference? Because there's a difference. Sorry,
no,
go ahead.
No, you go.
Well, I think it's great that you have people who understand that this is the 14th fastest run in Africa by a guy whose initials are CW. That's fine, but nowadays you need to impart the excitement, the show, the entertainment side of the sport, as well as the superb athletic performance that you've just seen.
I have to tell you a couple of quick stories because I'm going to ask you to offer your own stories. One is my pal Naomi, who was venue producer for us in Lima. She did lots of sports, but where I was concerned for roller skating, roller artistic skating. Anyway, she had a trial by fire moment for a venue producer. Within the same session, we had a fire alarm. Where we weren't sure if we were going to have to evacuate the building. We had the big screen freeze with athlete's image on it like that, which was kind of funny. And that meant because the screen froze that we couldn't get the scores. So she then was running from our tech table up to, wow, indeed. She was running up to the tech table to take a screenshot of the piece of paper that had the scores, running it back to us as announcers. Then my microphone failed. So we had one headset mic for my pal Gonzalo and I to share. Yeah. So it went from here to here to here to here. So I just said, Naomi, you get a big hug and a kiss because, man, that was a tricky day. I know. There's another fantastic announcer who's just joined us, Tim Hughes. Yes, we all know Tim. Hey, Tim. So there was that. And then as a figure skating announcer, I was at a competition, sort of local competition and sort of a qualifying event, but not big name skaters. There was a guy who'd been brought in. He was a local radio announcer and a huge boxing fan. So he started to announce and, started to announce the competitors. And typically what happens in a warm-up is it's Andy K representing such and such club and you come on the ice. Anyway, so what he did was he waited for them all to get on the ice. And then he said, rounding the first corner in the red dress, little Debbie Sue Smith. As figure skating people, we died. So, yeah, you're right, Naomi. Best times ever. So I want to know from you, have there been any moments where you've thought, gee, I should have just called in sick today because all of the gremlins are out?
Well, I can think of a couple. One from quite a long time ago, and one from very recently. The very recent one first. As I said to you earlier, athletics is one of these sports that you have to sort of try and fit all the pieces together so that nothing really important is happening stage left when everybody's looking stage right. And we were doing a meeting recently. We had Mondo Duplantis, Swedish pole vaulter. He is stupendous. This kid, and he is a kid. He's I think he's still 19, 20, and he's breaking world records left, right, and centre. And he'd cleared a height, and so the bar was going to be raised to the world record height. And we said to him, or via my officials, because I can talk to the track officials, I said, look, relax. We're going to do a race. We'll do the race. We'll finish the race. We'll show the replays. We'll put the results out. Then we'll come back to you because you're the only one left in the competition, and you can try for the world record. And he went, absolutely fine. And he sat down. So we got the 400-meter guys out, and they warmed up, and we said, here's the men's 400 meters. And we introduced all the athletes, 6 lanes on an indoor track. And the announcer said, and so, penultimate race of the day, men's 400 meters. Silence. And then you see in the corner of your eye, there's the official with the gun going like this, smacking the gun. And I quickly buzzed down to one of my floor managers and said, what's the problem? He said, oh, the gun's broken. And I said, well, how long is it going to, of course, typical, how long is it going to take to fix? As if my floor manager knows. So we gave them 2 minutes to fix it. And so at the end of 2 minutes, we need to sort of make a decision because there is nothing else happening. The whole thing has come to a complete standstill. And after 2 minutes, it's still not clear that they're going to get the gun fixed. So the other floor manager's over by the pole vault. And I said, look, I know we said to him he's got about 5 or 6 minutes. But could you ask the Duplantis if there's any chance he could go and break the world record now? And so he asked this 19-year-old laid-back Swedish American educated kid. He went, yeah, of course I'll do it. Got up, got the pole, broke the world record. The whole place goes absolutely doolally. So best laid plans of mice and men completely kiboshed, but rescued by a sensational performance. And everybody left that place not thinking, "Ooh, that was a bit of an ugly moment." Of course, all the people in the know did. We all look back at it with horror. But the guy broke the world record, and the place went balmy. Going back many other years,
I just have to beg the question: do you have to yell "go" if the gun doesn't work? Like, what happened?
Well, they had to go and get an old school gun that wasn't connected to the starting block. Yeah.
Oh, I
so
see.
The electronic gun that broke. So we got an old school one.
Okay, I didn't realize there was such a thing.
Yeah, there is. But the ramifications of having a loaded weapon in the UK are probably slightly more than they are in some parts of Northern America. So it's not something you can carry about on your hip, So some bloke had to, run down 17 flights of stairs to get it and bring it back. So hence we couldn't go immediately.
Before you go on to something else, just take a look at the screen.
Lima test event, Andy. Oh my God.
Carly had to bring it up. Okay, go ahead.
So Lima test event for athletics. You were talking about your producer doing everything, running up to the box and taking a photo, and
Naomi, yeah,
we were pretty much operating on that kind of level for the test event because, test events are test events. I would love to think that they're called test events because you test everything you're going to use in 2 or 3 months' time. They're not called test events for that. They're called test events because they test your patience. That's why they're called test events. We were operating on phones, WhatsApp, photos, radios with a coverage of about 4 meters, which is tricky in an outdoor athletic stadium. Carla Piper, who you saw the message there, was calmness personified. I wasn't. All I could think about doing the whole test event series in Lima was if we can get through it with the technology we've got on offer here, then we can get through it when we've got some better stuff come the actual event. So that was a fun one. And I do remember one from years ago where my infield interviewer was a guy called John Ridgen. John Ridgen is now the CEO of World Athletics. It's, the second most important man in the sport. But at the time, he was my infield announcer. And Yelena Isinbayeva from Russia had just broken the world record in Birmingham for the pole vault. And I said to John, "You need to go and interview her." So there was a break in proceedings, and they said, "Get out, John Ridgen is with Yelena Isinbayeva." And John said, "Well, here we are, Yelena, congratulations, another world record, another $50,000. What will you do with the money?" And Isinbayeva said, in not quite this bad Russian accent, said that I'm going to go home and I'm going to buy
You're going to go home and hold on. You just garbled a little bit.
You're going to buy your father a goat? What kind of goat do you buy for $50,000? And John said, "Right, okay. Tell me, Yelena, what goat are you going to buy?" And she said, "It's a lovely goat. It's 50 meters long with 2 big sails." Went, "Oh, you can buy her a boat, not a goat." And I have nothing happened for the next 3 minutes because 50,000 people in the stadium just were laughing too much for us to carry on. But there we go.
Oh my goodness! Anybody else out there got some stories? So let's recap a little bit about Freelance Friday. Hold on, I'm going to go find it again. Let's recap a little bit. If people want to get a little bit more involved, oops, I've got all my things up at the same time. Hold on.
Yeah, it happens to the best of us, PJ.
Oh, wait. No, I lied. I have one other thing that I would like to discuss with you. Explain.
Yeah, okay. This is like a trip down memory lane. This is fantastic.
I do my research, my friend.
That was the I want to say marathon or race walk in Rio. No, it must have been the marathon because the marathon was by the seafront, and it was the paras. That's right, it was the para wheelchair marathon. It was like day 956 in Rio, Um, one of the greatest organised Olympics, as we all remember. And I may have become a little tired at
Maybe.
that point. Yeah,
Looks like you.
I mean, that was a tough gig. I think everybody will tell you it was a tough gig. I mean, a beautiful city, beautiful people. Food was amazing. Some of the venues were stunning. Certainly the seafront venues, the racewalk venue was, oh goodness me, it's one of the prettiest places I've ever been to in my entire life. But after 7 or 8 weeks, that was the last day, I think, and it may have just got to me just a tad. But yeah, fun times.
You know what? It is just a treat to talk about events. And to everybody who joined us in today, you have been just a treat. You can connect with Andy on Facebook and on your website, andykevents.com. So if people were going to do something, should they get in touch with you? Should they look and see who's been on this chat today and get in touch with each other? What would you like to see people do?
I think it's an open-ended book. I really, really do. As I said to you, right at the beginning, if it's phoning a mate just for a chat, that's amazing. If it's phoning somebody who you've got a mutual interest in, equally good. Personally, for me, the two exciting things are getting in touch with somebody that you've been wanting to work with for a long time, and have never had the opportunity, never had the chance. By gum, you got the chance now, because let's face it, we're not exactly going to be doing too much for the next 3 or 4 months, one would imagine. And equally as exciting, I think, we all work in a pretty competitive market. It's not a big market, but it's relatively competitive. And I think, when we come out of this, and we will come out of it, when we come out of it, at the end of 2020 and 2021 and 2022, they're going to be the busiest 2.5, 3 years of sport I think we can ever remember. And I wonder if the likes of Andy Kay and Andy Ashworth and PJ and Carla and Christy and Tim, Naomi, etc. I wonder if there's going to be enough of us to do the work. And I would love to think that when that phone call comes in and says, "Can you do X and Y?" and you can't. That you can pick the phone up to somebody who you may have made contact with on Phone a Freelance Friday months and months ago and say, "I have got the perfect gig for you." That's what it's designed for. It's designed for a bit of support, some empathy, some possible sympathy if that's required. Because I say financially, I'm sure we're all going through a pretty horrible time at the moment. But yeah, it's also just to perhaps provide some bridges where there might have been bridges before, and realize at the end of the day, yes, it's a competitive place, but there's only a finite number of people who do this, and we are going to need some bodies in the next 3 years, absolutely, for sure. So let's make it work for everyone.
You know what? So if it's time for people to just decide that this is something that they would like to do, then now's kind of the time to do it. Rooney and Daniel Tasker just said there's going to be 3 years sport or more squashed into 2 years. So that's actually what you're talking about, is this whole condensed calendar that we're going to be faced, and the fact that the 2 Olympic Games, if the one next summer in fact can get pulled off, that they're going to be 8 months apart or 6 months apart or something. That hasn't happened for a very long time, since the 90s, since they split them off. So
and in 2022 you've got the World Athletics Championships, followed by the Commonwealth Games, followed by the European Championships, and I think it's the latter two. I may be wrong, because there are so many dates whizzing through my head at the moment, but 2 of those competitions are split by 4 days. Now, everybody probably listening to this knows that you would normally get on site minimum for a major event a week before.
Yeah.
So whoever's doing event 1 is not going to be at event 2 in time. And that's where we need to come together as a group, either individually or under one umbrella, to ensure that it's the people that we know, that we love, that we respect, that we trust, who get those gigs.
Well, I think that all of it is, I think we're living in kind of a very exciting time. So I think that that's where we're going to leave it, is the excitement. Thank you so much for sharing your story. You're always such a good-natured guy. My goodness, you've got some funny stories. I bet you there's more. I bet you there's more, Andy.
There may be more. Perhaps we can do them a little bit later with a drink. And can I just say also, thanks so much for organising this. And if there's anybody with the right name for a 3-week, 6-week lockdown, it has to be PJ. I mean, you know, I've got out of my PJs just to talk to you. How ironic is that?
I'm half out of my PJs. I'm not going to lie. I put it out on Twitter that if you're still business on the top and pajamas on the bottom, you can let us both know by Twitter. So maybe we'll do this again. This was so much fun.
Absolutely. Great fun.
We're going to leave it here for now. Go to andykevents.com, connect with Andy via Facebook. He won't bite, and connect with me too if you like. So we'll see everybody. Thank you again for coming by. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.